Hello and welcome to Brain Says Strange Things. I'm Patrick, this is my brother Jordan, and this is the podcast where we talk about horror movies. In this episode, we are going to be talking about a director who is perhaps better known for his comedy films, but he has made 2 entries in the horror genre, including his newest film, Tusk. The director we are talking about is, of course, Kevin Smith, and Tusk is the film we'll be reviewing in depth this evening, or this morning, depending on when you're viewing this.
On this.
On this episode, we will be reviewing Kevin Smith's Tusk. We may also discuss some other of his films briefly, but Tusk is the one that we watched for the first time tonight, and it's the one that we're going to start our discussion with. This is a very odd film.
Really?
Yeah, based on a podcast that Kevin Smith did. And it's essentially I would say, a comedy / body horror. Is that fair as a genre description?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Yep, a comedy / body horror about a man played by Justin Long who is kidnapped by an eccentric older man played by Michael Parks. Played quite well by Michael Parks. And Justin Long's character is mutilated and transformed into a kind of human walrus. Thus the title of the film, Tusk. There's some other strange things going on, but that is the gist of it.
Yes.
Very strange story, very odd tone, odd film. What did you think of Kevin Smith's Tusk?
It is weird, but I knew that going in.
Sure. Of course it's weird. It's a horror film called Tusk.
Yeah.
Right? I mean...
I don't want to go crazy, but I liked it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it worked.
Okay.
I thought it was like, you say that's the genre that it's in, but I think it's like extremes of all kinds of genres.
Yeah, it's difficult to classify.
It's weird, because what he's got going for him is Kevin Smith writes good dialogue, of course, everybody knows that.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds good.
For the most part.
For the most part. Okay, but some of the comedy is falls flat.
Yes,
a little bit.
Very flat.
A lot of the stuff, it's kind of like George Lucas. It's like whatever George Lucas didn't do is the good part of it.
Okay.
So it's like the stuff that's funny is like the little subtle acting.
Sure.
That Michael Parks and Justin Long do.
Sure. And you don't necessarily want to give Kevin Smith the credit for those little moments.
No, because when they take time out to actually do a joke, here's the joke, and they show what their podcast is like, it is not funny at all, and it's kind of painful to watch them do these jokes, and they're laughing at, their head's gonna explode. It's so funny, and they're watching they're talking about masturbating or something. It's really, that's what's so funny, and they're it's like trying to recreate something really hilarious,
right?
But you can't really do that,
right?
No one can do that.
Right.
That's impossible.
It would be like if we made a movie out of this podcast.
Yeah, it made me think about this one a little bit. Is that what we sound like?
Right.
But I hope not. But I just you get to see a lot of different acting styles in this movie by really good actors, actually. Mm-hmm. That girl was really good in it. They're all in different movies.
Yeah.
They're all kind of hitting different notes. I guess that's...
Yeah, and that's what I mean, that tonally it was very strange.
It's very off in
very
tone.
Strange tonally.
But I think it works that way. That's not too distracting because they're all at the extremes of all of them. So you don't take any of them very seriously. There were really funny scenes with Johnny Depp.
I laughed.
He doesn't want to be... Yeah, I thought it was funny. And with Michael Parks. Just kind of the interplay between the two. The beginning scenes with Justin Long and Michael Parks, they're both kind of doing something completely different. They're two different kind of actors, basically. And they're performing, I don't know. I mean, I never study acting, but
no,
you can tell it's very different. And for some reason, it kind of works. And I think that's what it is that they're both two extremes. One is really dark, serious.
Yeah.
And then he's really good, Michael Parks. So you just like sense something's going to happen here.
Right.
You don't quite know what. You kind of know he's going to something to do with the walrus. Mm-hmm. You kind of get creeped out, or I did, by him. And Justin Long's like way over the top. He drank something.
He's like a Kevin Smith character. Making him.
Yeah, it's like a Kevin Smith character wandered into a horror movie.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so.
And this whole movie had that weird kind of tension, which for me kind of worked against the movie a lot of the time. But you might be right in that it did create one place where it did work is in the interplay of those two actors. I guess
even just those.
I guess I wish more of the movie would have been like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of that stuff where I was like, I wish the movie would have been more of this.
Yeah,
because ultimately I'm like, is it entertaining? Yes, I thought it was an entertaining movie. That's why I would give it a recommendation. Sure. But I was also thinking, like, what is the point of this? Like, you find out that it's based on a podcast, like a stoner conversation.
Right.
And it totally feels like that.
Yes.
It's like, I wish something would have come out of it, like, a little different.
Right.
When they throw in the message at the end, we're going to have to spoil things, but I guess, I don't know if it's spoiling, but when they're like, they say, like, your humanity, your soul crying.
Yeah.
I was like, where did that come from? It's like, that's the message, but where did that come from? That was like, wait a minute, we were just watching a guy fight another guy in a walrus suit.
Right.
Like, I will say that can work in a movie. But I don't understand those things connecting together. No. They were very it kind of seemed like an anthology thing.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, different directors came in and did different scenes. Like, Johnny Depp's character is out of another movie, although he's good.
Yep.
He's really good at it.
Yep.
And Justin Long's out of another movie. Haley Joel Osment is, I don't know, he's not really, you can't really judge his acting in the movie.
No,
he's
really, pretty
he has nothing
minimal,
really to do.
Yeah.
That girl is, like, doing dramatic scenes from an acting class or something. I don't really know what was going on there, but for some reason I think it kind of worked a little bit. Okay. Like, she kind of was, like, the most interesting person in it, I guess. I don't, aside from the killer guy who wanted to turn people into walruses, but I don't know. This review is going to have to be all over the place because that's what the movie was. The movie was
all over the place. But ultimately there was enough to keep you interested, entertained, that you did enjoy it.
It was unique.
Yeah, it was. I'm glad you liked it because I wanted to like it more than I actually did. And I was very much on the fence about how I felt about this movie for a lot of it. On the one hand, I do appreciate that it was unique. And Kevin Smith is a very individual filmmaker. He just kind of makes movies about what he wants to make movies about, what he finds interesting, you know what I mean? And I appreciated that about the movie, that it was a unique, kind of silly, weird idea, just something that he was interested in putting on film for whatever reason. So I appreciated that to an extent, although I also want to be careful to not give it credit for being weird for the sake of being weird. You know what I mean?
Yes, because that's what works. That's like a lot of comedy does that too.
Right.
Where, okay, this is not a joke. A person falling down is not a joke.
Right.
You know, like, that's a gag. Like,
right.
You got to do a little setup and payoff.
Right.
You got to do a little math.
Right. So, like, on the one hand, okay, I do appreciate that it was strange, but on the other hand, I almost don't want to give it credit for that because, like, if that's if that's like a qualitative value, you could just, I made a movie about a talking balloon that's best friends with a camel. It's crazy, and if you don't like it, you don't get what I'm doing. I'm being crazy. You know what I mean?
You kind of get that sense when, at the end of the movie, when the podcast that inspired this kind of rolls in.
Yeah, they should have left that
and,
off.
Oh man, that was such a mistake to put that in there.
Yeah,
because
they kind of pissed you off a little bit.
It did. I was like, this is tainting what I actually thought of it now.
Yeah.
Because they're just... there's something about hearing people... You said it that Kevin Smith is a huge fan of himself.
Yeah.
And that is totally true. Like, forever. I mean, I like Kevin Smith. I have had like a love-hate relationship with him.
Likewise. I think that's true of a lot of people.
But I would have to say, like this movie, for the most part, I do like him.
Okay.
So, I don't know.
Okay. Well, okay, so...
I don't want to praise it too much either, because I didn't think it was that great.
Right.
But it's a hell of a lot more entertaining, more interesting than anything else.
Well, sure. I mean, and on the one sense, I would rather watch a movie like this than like some kind of sleekly produced, like, Insidious or, you know, all these horror films.
Or like Ouija or something.
Yeah. Granted.
By the numbers.
Granted. I mean, this is a true, like, independent film, both in the way it was made and in spirit.
It's not some groundbreaking idea, you know?
No.
So.
And for me, ultimately, the kind of tensions in the film amongst tone, like I said, worked against it a little bit more than they worked for it. This was more like, had I not seen Red State, which is his previous horror film, which I liked quite a bit more than this.
I like Red State better, too.
This movie is what I would have expected a Kevin Smith horror movie would be like. Right? It seemed like a Kevin Smith movie. It sounded like a Kevin Smith movie. And it had horror elements brought into it. Whereas Red State is, you would not identify Kevin Smith as the director of that just watching the movie. I don't think.
I kind of got a little Kevin Smith trying to make a Quentin Tarantino movie.
Oh yeah, there was definitely Quentin Tarantino. But there's a Quentin Tarantino aspect to all of Kevin Smith's movies, with the long scenes of dialogue and characters and genre pieces discussing, you know, run-of-the-mill everyday things, etc., etc. I mean, I
thought more of like the mashing of genres.
Okay.
Sort of a little bit.
Yeah.
Whereas like he didn't really care what he was.
But I also think, like, I mean, is that a good quality that he doesn't care? And like, I also think some of it is.
I think
like,
you can make it like too precious and care too much.
Yeah,
about
you can. But I also think there's something to be said for the fact that Kevin Smith, while he is a good writer, he is not a great director.
No, he's not good.
And
that's why I make the George Lucas comparison.
Yeah, and the kind of like variances in tone in this movie made it seem a little bit like it maybe was out of his control a little bit, or he doesn't really understand how to shape tension in a movie. And then another thing for me was, and this is for the worst thing about any movie, like a movie can be anything and it can work. It was boring. You know what I mean? And that, to me, is the kiss of death. Like, yes, it's a crazy premise, but the tension kind of ends about, like, halfway through the movie. I mean, this psychotic guy who kidnaps Justin Long's character basically goes through with his plan.
Right.
And at that point, we're going back and forth between Johnny Depp and Justin Long's friends, investigating the crime, and we're with the walrus and the guy. And there's some good scenes in each of those, but there was no building of tension. You know what I mean? It was just kind of like, okay, interesting scene. Oh, there's a little interesting piece of acting. There's a little good bit here, but it just didn't add up to anything. And you're right, thematically, it's just blah, dead. And I get people are like, you shouldn't talk about Tusk not having a theme, but give me a reason that I'm watching it. You know, it's not funny enough to carry itself just on the comedy.
Right.
It's not scary or disturbing enough to carry itself just on the body horror. And beyond that, there just really isn't that much there. So even though I wanted to like this movie, I ultimately can't really recommend it.
Well, the story is a little bit like, well, I'm not going to say it's like Gone Girl, because I'm not going to make that comparison.
Okay.
I'm not going to make that comparison.
All right.
But I'll say, like, in story-wise...
I see what you mean, though.
If the main thing that you think this movie is about...
leading up to him becoming this human
ends
walrus.
halfway through it,
yeah.
Then it can turn interesting because you're like, what the hell are they going to do with this?
Now what's it going to be about?
Now they're, like, stuck with this.
Uh-huh.
And I actually kind of thought that that's the way it was going to go right away, because he turns into the walrus pretty quickly.
Right.
So then I'm like,
where's this going to go?
Where is the story going to go?
Right.
But you're right.
Doesn't go anywhere.
It doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
It doesn't really have much to say.
That was the problem. There was just nothing. I mean, look, at the end of the day, like,
I really wish they would have dialed up the comedy a little bit, because the
horror
are funny,
or make it more disturbing. Because you're right, there were moments. I mean, for me, body horror is kind of like my genre in terms of what will genuinely creep me out in horror.
Yes.
Body horror. Yeah, Cronenberg and these kinds of things. That's the thing that creeps me out, and there was some of that here. There was a genuine kind of sense.
Was he in a walrus suit, or was he a walrus?
He was a walrus, but even though they mentioned earlier that there was a walrus suit, but maybe that was the suit that the other guy was wearing.
He was like half in a suit and half not.
I think he was a walrus. I mean, it wasn't just a suit. Otherwise, they would have just taken him out of the suit. I mean, they like fused the arms.
Yeah, but his skeleton would have had to been rearranged.
Yeah, it's fair. The science is a little shaky.
Well, the science on the man walrus is a little bit shaky, but yes.
Okay, I lost my train of thought completely.
You hated it.
I didn't hate it.
Red State is a better movie.
I disliked it.
Red State's a better example of Kevin Smith trying horror.
Yeah, I wish we would have.
It made me kind of miss a little bit of the other things that I like about Kevin Smith. Like his dialogue did kind of pop, I think, a little bit.
There are moments of it, although I feel like it's not as fresh as it was when Clerks came out.
No, not really.
When Clerks came out,
it does seem a little bit like someone pretending to be Quentin Tarantino a little bit,
or even pretending to be Kevin Smith.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It was just kind of like a
greatest hits collection.
Yeah, like I say, it was kind of funny, like a Kevin Smith movie. I mean, like I say, I laughed out loud, multiple times.
Yeah.
It was kind of scary, like a body horror movie, but it just. Like I said, it just wasn't enough of either one of those things. And like at the end of as we've suggested, this was based on a podcast that Kevin Smith did, riffing on this bizarre classified ad that they saw, which ended up being a joke. A guy advertised free room and board, but the person would have to dress like a walrus. They brought this to their podcast. They riffed on it for a whole hour.
It's sounding less funny by the second.
Right. Came up with this whole scenario. But you can imagine how that would be a funny kind of conversation amongst Kevin Smith and his friends.
Yes.
And it's just one of those things that's funny with you and your buddies, and it probably should have just stopped there.
But that's just like today, It's like the movie is coming out before it's even made.
Right.
They're advertising it before it's even cast.
Right.
So this movie gets made from a podcast before anybody said, whoa, this probably shouldn't even be a movie.
Right.
Maybe it made for a funny podcast. Maybe I didn't
and again,
I heard on that.
And again, on the one hand, I kind of respect Kevin Smith because, like I said, he's in Hollywood, but he's always like an outsider. He just kind of does things his own way. He does the podcast. He comes up with this improv story on the podcast. He asks his fans to vote. Do you think it should be made into a movie or not? And then he makes that movie. That's cool. You know what I mean? Like, the idea of that is cool. But at the end of the day, it did not result in, for me, a good, interesting film. And ultimately, that's what's most important.
Yeah.
So I just...
Well, with other filmmakers where you look at, like, their whole career, and it kind of, like, you see common things and they add up, Kevin Smith's kind of, like, all over the place. So, on one hand, I kind of like that.
Yep.
But on the other hand, it's just, it lacks that it's made by anybody, really.
Well, he has no style as a director.
Yeah.
He has a style as a writer.
He'll even cop to that, which is kind of a cop-out. And his movie cop-out, which is just... But, just to say, like, well, I don't do this very well, that's just an excuse, like...
Or to say, like, well, movies are... I'm not really into the visuals or anything. It's like, well, then fucking movies are a visual medium. You know what I mean? Like, you should care about the craft of what you're doing to at least a certain extent. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? You don't have to be the master of it. Yes, you can be more known for your dialogue, but it's like, you're not doing a podcast, right? You're making a film. And you're involving all these people and all this money. Well, right. Yes, Jordan. I don't know what you're talking about.
Sorry.
But no, it's true. Like, you're not writing an essay. You're making a film. It is a visual medium. You need to pay attention to things like pacing and tone.
But this is kind of like who he is. This is kind of like the persona he's adopted. He's always wearing hockey jerseys.
Oh, yes. Kevin Smith, he's like Stan Lee. Like, his greatest creation is Kevin Smith, the character, right? And he's been so successful in selling that character that he has all these followers who will, put up money to, like, help him make these movies based on podcasts that they listen to.
He's got a little bit of that, like, the Tarantino and the Joss Whedon effect for me, where I love what they do, but the minute I hear them start to kind of talk about it, I'm just like, oh my god.
I completely disagree with you.
Just show me your movie.
Well, I think Joss Whedon is terrific, and
I think he's good
I
too.
I love to hear him talk
hard
about what
for me
he
to
does,
listen.
but we don't want to get too far off of.
I don't want to
topic.
bash too many people.
No,
I don't want to bash Kevin
I
Smith.
don't want to bash
like
Kevin Smith either. I kind of want to have like a more broad Kevin Smith episode, because I have had personally like a really interesting relationship in terms of how I view Kevin Smith. Like, I was hardcore Kevin Smith fan. I think he was way, way ahead of his time in so many ways with some of those earlier movies. So many things. Like, he put Stan Lee in a cameo in his movie before, like, civilians knew who Stan Lee was. Like, as a comic book fan, Kevin Smith was a big deal back in the day. And his movies were really, really, really funny. I mean, watching Clerks was like a life-changing experience for me. But I haven't loved everything he's done since then. And I found a lot of this kind of persona he puts out to be very off-putting, and very obnoxious. So there's a lot to say about Kevin Smith. But it's I think more than we really can get into in this episode.
So no on Tusk for you.
I would say no. I wish I could recommend it. It was unique, but you know what? That's not enough. It's got to be, because like I say, it's too easy just to be unique. It just wasn't enough of any other thing for me to really enjoy it. There were good bits, but I would say rent and watch Red State.
It was hard for me to kind of put it in a box, like what is this type of movie?
Which
how do I even
good.
How do I even criticize this thing?
Yep.
How do I evaluate it? But I just kind of looked at it like, did it entertain me? And I think like overall I did.
Yeah, and see, for me, like, I got bored because there was no tension. You know what I mean? It wasn't building to anything. It didn't. There were moments that worked, but it just didn't hold together.
But you can have movies without tension,
but you gotta have something.
Yeah,
there was just nothing. There just
something,
wasn't enough. Like, every time I thought I could kind of like grab onto something, like I'm like, oh, okay, this is Kevin Smith being funny again, or this is Kevin Smith doing body horror. It just it almost went there, but it just never quite went there. So yeah, ultimately, I guess I don't recommend this movie. But his other horror movie is Red State. I do recommend that. I wish we had time to watch it again, because I haven't seen it for quite some time.
Yeah.
Is there anything you want to kind of say about that movie?
Michael Parks.
Yeah, Michael
He's
Parks.
great in it.
Really good in that. He's great in Tusk too. He's just a really fun actor.
And he was in that We Are What We Are movie that we watched too.
Yeah, which we liked.
Yeah.
He's just always a really terrific actor to watch. And but Red State was like a departure, a complete departure for Kevin Smith. It was more like straight thriller, straight horror. Didn't look like a Kevin Smith movie. No elements of comedy in there, as far as I remember.
No.
I don't think I loved it, but it was a satisfying experience. And this wasn't.
Okay.
So
I kind of feel the same way about Red State. I like Red State more, but I feel like it was a really entertaining movie. And I think it was really overlooked too.
Very overlooked.
The fact that they have all the credit crawl of all the people who supported this Tusk movie, that
at the end of Tusk,
kind of annoying too. It's like, once something underground becomes so popular, like it loses what was special about it.
Well, Tusk was not popular. I mean, Tusk was a bomb.
No, not critically successful, but obviously it had its
it
fans and supporters.
it was popular enough to get made, but I don't think
I kind of feel like those people thought like it was. They liked it because it was odd, which I find kind of annoying, because that's not.
And because it was
that's
Kevin
not a reason
Smith.
to like a movie, and it was Kevin Smith. Yeah, he had to build.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I want to. On the one hand, I do. Like you said, like, I'd rather see this than Ouija. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I'm glad that they're. I don't want to be a hypocrite, because I do get frustrated that, like, you look at horror now, and it's just all these they all look the same. They're bland. They're homogenized. They're just going for the lowest common denominator. Here's a real independent filmmaker making a kind of maverick, in a sense, movie. That's what horror should be. It should be kind of on the edge.
Well, I think
it wasn't good. It's still got to be good. It wasn't.
I think I look at it like the fact that I was kind of creeped out by a Kevin Smith movie.
Yeah.
The guy being turned in. I thought that was good.
Yeah.
But I think you were kind of thinking like that's kind of, if you're creeped out by a Kevin Smith movie, that's kind of a sad state of horror movies. Which is it's kind of true.
I think it's more a sad state of movies in that, like, oh my gosh, this is at least an original idea. You know what I mean?
Right.
That you're grabbing onto that so much. But it's like, I need it to be original and also good. I know I'm very demanding. Sorry, movies. I like most movies. I was just saying after we did the last one that I feel I want to watch one that I don't like because I feel like I'm always I always like everything and you don't like them. So
and now I liked it.
Finally, this is one that I didn't really like. Yeah. All right. Anything else we need to say about Tusk or Kevin Smith? Nope. All right. So you can go either way on this one, I guess. It's a genuine split decision on Brain Says Strange Things. Jordan says...
Walrus, yes.
Walrus, yes. Watch Tusk.
Yes.
I am Team Walrus, no. Skip Tusk, but maybe some of the other films Kevin Smith has coming up in this True North trilogy, of which I guess this is supposed to be the first, will be more interesting. He's got something about a killer moose. That's supposed to be like Jaws with a moose. But see, that's like another thing. Like, that sounds funny. That. It's probably going to be a good movie, but we'll wait till that movie comes out to actually trash it. In the meantime, watch Tusk or don't. But
and watch Kevin Smith's other stuff.
Watch Kevin Smith's other stuff.
Don't write him off.
Don't write him off. And I think we'll revisit the topic of Kevin Smith as a director because there's a lot more to say. But regardless of whether or not you watch Tusk, we do appreciate you watching Brain Says Strange Things and hope you will come back soon to watch our next episode. We'll be here. We hope you are too. Thanks as always for watching. Bye-bye.
Bye.